Welcome to the Ask Malcolm RSA with Minister for Communications, Malcolm Turnbull. It's a great pleasure to have a unique event tonight where we have members from the public directly asking their questions to the Minister virtually here tonight. The questions will be focused on the Digital Transformation Office and other federal government communications issues. The people putting on tonight's event are RSA, Code for Australia, and supported by MAPR. I'm Eyal Halimish, and I'm the CEO of RSA.org. We're joined by Minister for Communications, Malcolm Turnbull, as well as the CEO of Code for Australia, Oliver Abaz. We've also got the great opportunity to have a number of members of the public joining us tonight, who are all coming from different locations across the country, where they're going to be asking their questions directly to the Minister. Before we get to their questions, I just want to introduce some of the people that are joining us. We have Aviva Beecher-Kelk, who runs an organization called Clickability that helps citizens review the services that government provides them online. We also have Julie Gibson, who runs an organization called HitNet, where they provide software and hardware that helps people in remote parts of the country actually engage in government services and other services. We also have Verena Railings from Port Stephens, who's very passionate about the way in which we regulate advertisers across the country. And she's got a question about how we can strengthen the ability to regulate the way in which we sexualize images in advertising. We've got Teresa Corbin, who's the CEO of ACAN, the Australian Communications Consumer Action Network. And finally, Karen Cook, who hasn't been able to join us yet. We've had a couple of technical difficulties with her right now, but she's got a question about accessibility and transparency of the government, in particular in relation to the Chappelle Corby case. And if she can't join us, I'll be asking her question on her behalf. But before we get to those questions, I wanted to turn to the Minister and to Oliver to talk a little bit about this new initiative called the Digital Transformation Office. So Malcolm, it sounds like the government needs a digital facelift. So tell us, what exactly is the Digital Transformation Office?
It's a bit more than a facelift. The Digital Transformation Office is a new agency which has whole of government responsibilities. It's located in my department, however, and it kicks off officially on the 1st of July, but of course it's been operating for some time. The aim is to ensure that the goal is to enable us to meet our commitments of making all major interactions with government or transactions with government capable of being affected digitally end to end. And the goal is to rationalise the way and improve the way the government deals with the public, to have a totally customer-centric approach, so that it is as easy and as cool and interesting to deal with government, and whether it's applying for grants or tax or Medicare or whatever, as it is dealing with one of the big successful online platforms.
Great. So we're basically bringing government into the 21st century and putting citizens at the center of their interactions.
That's right. That's right. Definitely the 21st century. Some people have suggested it's the late 20th century. No, we are going for the 21st century.
Right.
And as opposed to the 19th century.
Right. And what would you say is the thing that inspired you to come up with this office?
Oh well, it is simply, as you said, bringing the government in the 21st century, but it's serving the people, right? I mean, one of the problems that government has is that it, by and large, it doesn't have any competition. Okay, most of what it does is unique to it. It's not entirely true. Generally, that's true. So stay with me. So it doesn't have the pressure of the market to do a better job, and often governments become self-regarding. And this is not a criticism of governments or politicians or public servants, but it's inevitable. There's nothing like competition to keep you on your toes. And so what's happened, I think, is that a lot of our ICT, a lot of our digital platforms have really been designed to make it easier for government, if it's easier for anyone. So I'm a very passionate believer in putting the customer first, focus on the customer's needs. And if you do that, you just say, how can I make it easier for that person there, that citizen, to do their stuff with the government easier and faster in a more effective fashion. If you do that, by the way, you will save a lot of money. So over time, but that's not the focus, right? The focus is on doing a better job for the customer. So that's what it comes about. It's serving the people better. And I think we've been inspired by a lot of examples overseas. The government digital services in the UK, so we know very well, and they've done a fantastic job along these lines. We're obviously very aware of what's happened in a number of other countries. The Latvians are absolutely the world's leaders in this area. But of course, they have the advantage of no legacy systems to grapple with. When the Soviet Union collapsed, there wasn't much left, wasn't much there. So generally, this is everyone's into this. I mean, and it requires a sort of a different mindset. It requires customer focus and agility. You've got to be agile. You've got to have a very flexible, creative approach to building these platforms and engagement with citizens, and keep on trying new things.
Yeah. So it's that lack of competition means we need to look sometimes overseas in other ways and create an office that's able to do this. And it brings us actually to Code for Australia, which I understand Code for Australia is a chance to take some people who are actually outside of government, maybe some tech geeks, bring them into government and getting them shaking up the system, getting people thinking agile, thinking customer-centric. And I understand it's modeled off of Code for America, which has been running for a number of years, and now Code for All, which is in a number of countries. So now we actually do have a slightly competitive landscape about how can we better integrate technology into government. But Oliver, tell us, is Code for Australia going to stand up to the mark? What are our plans here in Australia?
Sure. So our mission for Code for Australia is to create a better interface between government and citizens via civic technology and create a civic tech ecosystem in Australia. To what Malcolm was mentioning, to create better competition and also to help government to leverage the technology that is happening everywhere in the world.
Right. So Malcolm, we've got great organizations like Code for Australia popping up. How will we be able to leverage these organizations' work or incorporate them into what the DTO is doing?
Well, the answer is simply by working with them. I hope that we will be able to attract smart, creative people like your team, your cohort, into working with the DTO, either within the DTO. They don't have to work for the government forever. It's not like joining the French Foreign Legion or something. We can get people to come in and work on particular projects and then go off and do something else. I mean, again, it's got to be very nimble in the way it operates, and we're very keen on looking for new ideas. We also need, much better engagement between the federal government and state and local governments. For example, the MyGov platform, which many millions, I think it's well over 6 million Australians have got accounts with now, which obviously enables you to transact with Centrelink and ATO and Medicare and so on. That we want to build into a portal. I think that's such a retro term, but you know what I mean. That a platform, I guess, which will be available for all governments. So, if you were you might be a local government. You can bolt your services on to that, so that will mean that I'll have my MyGov account, my single digital address, and which is mine forever, plenty of storage and stuff that's provided by the government. And so I would, in due course, the goal is that I would be able to transact with and communicate with federal, state, and local governments all through that address. And you can imagine, the enormous efficiencies that come from that. In order to make this attractive, we are proposing to make access to MyGov free, other than the modest onboarding costs. So we're not seeking to turn it into a business, and that's just to drive take up. I mean, the goal here, I should stress, the goal here is not to save money for the federal government, although we will over time. The goal is to drive national productivity and creativity. Governments are about a third of our GDP, about a third of the economy is government, public sector. If we make the public sector more efficient, if we make engaging with it more interesting, if we enable it to be more creative, that improves the productivity of the whole economy. So this is not, but I just want to stress, because people hear politicians talking about this kind of stuff and they say, they're just trying to save money, get rid of people, replace them with machines.
This is about productivity.
Yeah, this is about productivity.
Yeah, that sounds great. Malcolm, before we belabor too much on the DTO, I know there's a number of people waiting on the line.
Yeah,
there's some great questions. I have one final spark of a question for you before we move on to that, which is, with the digital transformation coming into effect, what is your personal most dangerous idea for the Digital Transformation Office?
Well, I don't have dangerous ideas. I have exciting ideas and innovative, amazing ideas. But I'll tell you what I think is potentially the most transformative idea, which is one of the things the DTO is already working on, which is establishing the framework for a single trusted digital identity. So just bear with me for a little bit while I explain. Imagine if we have, that's so hard. That's so hard. Imagine if we had a single trusted digital identity, so that demonstrated this is really me, okay? And that should enable me to transact with every platform, every government platform, every government service, whether it's the tax department, Medicare, the Department of Roads in New South Wales, or my fishing license in Tasmania.
It's like one account where you can log in at any time. It's could be like your social media.
And of course your bank, and you've got different. I mean, this is not an original idea. Other countries have done this. New Zealanders have done this with Real Me, and the Brits have done a similar thing. But you see, what will happen is, over time, your digital identity will be the most important thing that you have, because you will have a digital identity with certain attributes. One of those attributes might be an entitlement to childcare benefits. One of them might be a bank account at the Commonwealth Bank. One of them, might be entitlement to a tax refund or something like that.
So you collect enough information through your single point of view.
That's exactly right. And so that then becomes, and you build up the strength of that trusted digital identity, which obviously reduces fraud, but it also enables a much, enhances productivity, because you're not having to establish your identity again and again and again with all of the flaws associated with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a great idea, just to have one point of contact, and I'd love to see how that comes into fruition. But let's turn it over to the public. I mean, RSA is very much about getting citizens at the center of it all, and we want to make sure that citizens are actually asking questions directly to members of government, such as yourself. Okay. And so, in the last 7 days, we've had an open opportunity for members of the public to jump on the RSA website, put in their questions, and then garner support from their friends and followers. And in 7 days, we had about 80 questions come into the floor, nearly 2,000 votes. And the people joining us today were in the top 5 questions. So these are the top 5 most popular questions as a result of that platform. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to the first question asker. This is Aviva Beecher-Kelp. She had 553 votes. And Aviva, I want to hand it over to you. Make sure you unmute your mic when you ask the question, but go ahead.
I'd like to know how the DTO is going to let citizens rate and review their experience as consumers of government social services.
Yeah, thanks, Aviva. Well, everyone will be able to provide feedback directly to the DTO, and that of course includes all Australians, including those with a disability. We'll have an online engagement platform which will seek feedback from the public, including suggestions on how existing government services can be improved. I'm a great believer in the wisdom of crowds, and of course, with the internet, it's very easy to access that. So there'll be no shortage of opportunities to do that through the website, dto.gov.au, and there'll be plenty of other opportunities there are now, in fact, through social media. But we really do want to engage very widely with the public. So that is a big part of it. We'll also design services in an agile way, and above all, in an iterative way. So that means there'll be extensive user testing and feedback. So, you know, we're not going to have the approach of waiting until something is absolutely perfect to launch it. We'll launch things, you know, as very early betas, and with the aim of saying, right, well, here it is. This is our first cut. You know, tell us what you think, and get some feedback. On it. I think it's also very important to set expectations. You know, as a politician, journalists are always asking me, you know, will you guarantee this will work? You know, do you absolutely guarantee that this, you know, the NBN's latest forecast will be met? And you've got to be honest and not fall in. You've got to be both honest and smart. You've got to be honest and say, no, I can't guarantee it, and be smart and not fall into the trap. You've got to say, look, this is the best idea, this is the best forecast we have at the time, we've done a lot of work, this is the best thing we've got, but you know something? If this particular product or policy doesn't work, or doesn't work as well as we would like, or there's scope to improve it, we'll improve it. That's got to be the right, you know, we've got the ability to tweak and change all the time. We've got to take advantage of that. We want your help to do it.
Aviva, did you have a follow-up for the Minister?
Yeah, thanks for that, Minister. I wonder if you could give me...
Minister, by the way, can you please not do that? I'm Malcolm, that's right. Or if you're feeling really young and you think I'm old, you can call me Mr. Turnbull, but all this minister does my head in. Some public servants love it. They love saying yes, Minister, no, Minister, 3 bags, full, Minister. But you don't have to do that.
Aviva, did you have another question for Big Mal?
Big Mal. He's not that. Big Mal is having a go. And you know, he's not that thin. He's actually quite fat. This guy he just wears black. He wears black to look slim.
Cool. Malcolm, I wonder if I could get you to comment on, I guess, yeah, my interest is in disability and looking at the NDIS coming in, what actions you might specifically take with the DTO to actually implement some of the feedback that you're given, A, around the DTO and B, around services.
Well, the action, you know, obviously there's no point getting feedback unless you take action on it. There is clearly a lot of opportunities, and I had some interesting meetings yesterday about this already. And I mean, you know, NDIS is not, you know, it's not in my portfolio responsibility directly, but I had some very interesting discussions about how we can use digital platforms to provide people with choice as to how they're going to spend or invest the money they've got that they've been had allocated in respect of managing their disability or their the person they're caring for's disability. With terms of different services and to provide the opportunity for online comparison, both in terms of price and quality, feedback. You know, someone has a number of people with a particular type of therapy for a particular disability. Obviously, there are issues about price, but there's also who does it. You know, how they rated, by people with a similar disability to the one I have, etc. And so I was very interested to look at that, and I think we need lots of good ideas here. We've got to use that that power that digital gives us to really empower the individual citizen, for whom a lot of this stuff is often pretty overwhelming.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Aviva, for your question.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Julie Gibson, and she had 289 votes on hers. Julie, do you want to ask your question to the Minister?
Hi, Malcolm. As we transition from physical service centres to digital ones, how will the DTO, with your mandate on having a customer-centric approach, address the issue of the digital divide? particularly with regard to remote Indigenous communities?
Yeah, well, the first thing is you've got to have a multi-channel approach. I mean, you can't on one day say the only way you can deal with Centrelink is online. So or any other agency. So that's the first thing. The way to drive digital platforms is to make them so compelling and easy to use and attractive that people want to use them. Mandating it in a, at least, for the foreseeable future is not something we want to do. So that's the first point I'd make. The second point I'd make is that we need to ensure that there is adequate connectivity in remote communities where there is and that's Indigenous communities, but also remote communities like country towns and people living on stations out in the outer Barcoo, where I was in Diamantina Shire and places like that in Western Queensland, and similar places in remote Australia. All of those people have had a really, they've had very poor connectivity forever. And the advent of the NBN satellite, long-term satellite service, which will begin, we hope in the within the second half of next year. So first satellite should be launched in September, but that will really be transformative. People in the bush who are in the satellite footprint will be able to get a 25 down, 5 meg up service, very high quality service, and that will be a complete game changer. And of course, not everybody in areas like that is going to be on the satellite. There are people who will be on fixed wireless and indeed on fixed line networks. So.
Back to you, Julie. Is there any follow-up on that?
So talking about people who don't have and would probably be accessing digital services.
Sorry, Julie, you're dropping out. Just I think we need a bit of better connectivity here. Just say that again, if you could.
So we're talking about people who don't have home computers and who would be accessing the digital services through a mobile. And so it's important to have that accessibility, but it also needs to be suitable cost-wise, but also usability as well, because we're talking about people who may have low literacy and where English isn't their first language. So I'm hoping that you'll also include those sorts of requirements in your customer-centric approach.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about that. And in terms of the sort of device of choice, I mean, the most important digital device for all of us is actually a smartphone, and that is where most transactions will be affected from. So
yeah, with free Wi-Fi hotspots, I hope.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Yes, yes, exactly. No, I'm really, Julie, very, very, very alert to this. I mean, the biggest, and this is why I've been so determined to get the NBN built quickly, or as quickly as we can, and as cheaply as we can, because if you look at internet usage, the percentage of people who don't use the internet at home is 10 times as high for the bottom income quintile as it is for the top one. And that is clearly, in large part, overwhelmingly a function of lack of income. So that's why I'm making sure that, the NBN, I mean, this is a gigantically expensive project, however you build it. But one of the problems with the way the previous government was going about it was not only it was going to take a hell of a lot longer, but it was also going to cost a lot more. And the published figures on that, which I think go back to the strategic review, suggested that the cost could be up to 80% higher on a monthly basis. Now that's again a big problem. We've got affordability is absolutely critical.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Malcolm. wouldn't have a good conversation with the communications minister if the NBN rollout didn't come out as something that's happening swiftly, and maybe not swiftly enough.
It'll never be swift. Well, it'll never be swift enough for me. And, but it is. But it is. Look, it is. You know, there are now over 1 million serviceable premises in Australia, which is
we're on our way.
Good. It is.
So moving on to the next question, we've got Verena Rowlings, who was actually the most popular question on RSA this time around.
Yeah.
She's coming to us from Port Stephens, and I'll hand it over to you, Verena.
Thank you. Good evening, Malcolm.
Hi, Verena.
Many of us self-regulation is failing advertising. It's evidence of companies ignoring the ASB directives, companies such as Wicked Campers, or repeatedly breaching the code. This is because the ASB has not been given the instruments to hold these companies actually accountable. Recent research is showing us that the objectification and sexualisation of women and children in advertising fuels the culture of entitlement and violence against them. And I'm just interested to know what your office can do about this issue.
Okay, well, let me run through a few points. Advertisements are subject to different regulatory obligations depending on what platform they're delivered on. So the content of most advertising, including radio and TV and outdoor media, including that displayed on vehicles such as the Wicked Campers, camper vans, is subject to a self-regulatory framework. The Australian Advertising Standards Bureau, the ASB that you referred to, administers these self-regulatory codes of practice. Now, turning to radio and TV and commercial free-to-air television and radio broadcasters, they're subject to a range of obligations set out in the Broadcast Industry Codes of Practice, and they are ultimately oversighted by the ACMA. Now, generally, there is pretty good compliance. And I'll come to Wicked Campers in a minute. But the Code for Advertising and Marketing Communications to Children, for example, specifically prohibits advertising or marketing communications to children which employ sexual appeal, include sexual imagery, contrary to prevailing community standards, or state or imply that children are sexual beings, that the product concerned will enhance their sexuality. Now, with the broadcasters, we do have federal jurisdiction over that, and the ACMA clearly ultimately has jurisdiction over that, and there's pretty good compliance. The Advertising Standards Board has had a lot of complaints about the Wicked Campers vehicles. It's determined that Wicked Campers have breached the code on different grounds on several occasions. In some cases, Wicked Campers have responded to the breach, and others they haven't. The difficulty is that in terms of federal jurisdiction, we don't have the authority over Wicked Campers, for example, that we do over radio and TV. So the Wicked Campers actions are quite unusual, if not, so I'm instructed, unique. But it's something that clearly state governments could take up with respect to the Wicked Campers situation. But I understand the problem, and I very much understand the issue of sexualisation and objectification. It's a real one. I don't think obviously it goes a lot further than Wicked Campers, but it's something that it's important that we bearing in mind and talking about and reflecting on in the context of what is, thankfully, at long last, a much heightened awareness of violence against women and in a more general scale. I mean that there's a bit of I would say a big awakening, not a reawakening. It's an awakening of awareness of the problems relating to violence against women, and we need to be talking about it as often as we can. We need to be getting them, particularly men, need to be getting across the message that violence against women is utterly unacceptable in any circumstance, and I don't ever miss an opportunity to do that, because we've got, it's ultimately, you can pass all the laws in the world, and there are plenty of laws, but ultimately this has got to be a change in attitudes and a change in people's minds and hearts.
Verena, I understand you were concerned about the strength by which the body is able to regulate this type of work. Did you have a follow-up to the Minister on that? I
do, and thank you for that. Malcolm's talked about we have a very good compliance rate. I'm going to respectfully disagree a little. For me, sure. Compliance would mean that the codes weren't breached in the first place, since the advertising body actually wrote the codes. And secondly, that compliance would mean that companies didn't reoffend, and many companies continue to reoffend simply because the ASB does have no powers to actually penalise them. This significantly, if you put it together, drops the rate of compliance. And in 2014, the ASB had a record number of complaints sent into them, and Wicked Campers was only one of those. Many companies are repeatedly breaching the codes because after they take it down, there's nothing to stop them putting up another one in exactly the same tone because there's no penalty against it. What I'd like to know is how can we give the ASB more power to actually not only enforce but to penalise companies who flout this law?
Well, there are ways that ultimately state and federal parliaments could give the ASB more power if they chose. Can I say that? One, thank you for raising this, and it's clearly an issue of very big concern because you've obviously had so much support from other participants. Let me take this one on board and look into it further. I think this is a good reminder. It's about time. I mean, there's a limit on my jurisdiction, as a federal, given the Constitution and the fact that we're talking about advertisers that don't have a federal license. But nonetheless, I can see your concern, and I'll undertake to you that I will sit down with the Advertising Standards Board soon, very soon. I'll make some time to see them very soon and get on to and raise that issue, and then come back and talk to you about it. Okay.
Great, Malcolm. That's a big commitment, and it's always exciting to see government ministers not just responding to questions, but actually taking something to the next level and committing some action as a result of it. So we hope that something emerges from that as well. Our next question comes from Teresa Corbin, who's the CEO of the Australian Communications Consumer Action Network, and it seems that she's dropped out, so I'm going to ask her question on her behalf. Her question is, while the Digital Transformation Office will make government services easier to use, what explicit measures are being taken to ensure the security and privacy of consumer information?
Well, it's a very important point, and we're obviously, well, not obviously, we are, as it happens, extremely alert to it. Data should be stored securely. The privacy of citizens must be maintained when they transact with government online. I just refer, Teresa, to the government's Digital Service Standard, which was recently developed by the DTO and can be found on the website, dto.gov.au. Criteria 6 requires for all new and redesigned services that they must assess the personal user data and information that their services will be providing, using or storing, and put appropriate measures in place to address security risks, legal responsibilities and privacy considerations. That this is Teresa's right to raise this issue, but I can assure you and her, everyone that's watching this, that this is absolutely in the forefront of our thinking.
And Mal, I mean, there's probably a fear for anyone who's giving information to government or even to anything online these days, is that, are we creating a big brother effect? Is there something where now we've got government managing so much of our information, so much of our tracking our patterns that, where does the buck stop?
Well, the buck certainly, with the big social media platforms, it stops and starts with them. you know, you've got to remember, if you're getting a fantastic product online for free, that means you're the product. Or as put another way, as The Onion, a very good satirical newspaper in the States, said about Facebook. They said, who needs the CIA now that we've got Facebook? Look, the reality is that most of us put much more information onto platforms like Facebook than we provide to the government, much vastly more. But nonetheless, the information that the government has, we have to, you know, protect and guard keep very secure and use only for the appropriate purposes, you know, for which it's been provided.
And if, you know, we've had an issue with some people wanting to request their information back from some of these platforms in order to ensure that they can actually retain their own big data. Is there a way in which we can expect this with the DTO or with other services that the government's providing?
Well, I mean, most of the information that you provide to the government, you do have access to. I mean, you know, you particularly your tax returns, and obviously you have all that information. What else is there? You know, your medical information. You have all that information. It's all. You may be sharing it. You may be not sharing it. You may be placing it in a government cloud or submitting it for the purpose of Medicare payments and so forth. But it's all your information. What the government is not doing, which of course, you know, Facebook, and I'm not making any criticism of Facebook or Google or anyone at all, but what the government is not doing is monetizing.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm, and thank you, Teresa, and your supporters for that question, which had 147 votes. We've got our last question for the night. It's a little bit outside the Digital Transformation Office prerogative, but it did have 551 votes, and it does relate to a very important communication issue for the federal government. It was put up by Karen Cook, and it focuses on transparency and accountability of the federal government. Over to you, Karen.
Hello, Malcolm.
Hi, Karen.
Okay, from your website, the DTO was established to make government more accessible and responsible.
Yeah.
Does that mean you will stop evading media abuse and crime with respect to Chappelle Corby and the censorship of the political and AFP corruption revealed by that case, including the proven role of the Press Council?
Well, look, Karen, you know, I know that you've got complaints about the way in which you've dealt with the Press Council, but I don't, and the government doesn't regulate the press, particularly the newspaper. There is a degree of regulation, obviously, of the broadcast media, but we don't regulate newspapers, and we're not planning to do so, or ever planning to do so. The Australian Press Council is the self-regulatory body for the print media industry. It has a set of principles which are binding on all publications. As you know, the Media Alliance, which is, you know, in the union that involves journalists, among other people, has a media code, a code of ethics, requires journalists to report and interpret news and current affairs honestly. Now, I know that you feel that there was not accurate, fair and balanced reporting in respect of Chappelle Corby, and I know you feel that when the Australian Press Council looked into it, they did not give you the right answer, or they didn't give you the answer that they should have. You know, I think that's really about all I can say about it. It's I mean, there's nothing. I'm sorry, but the government. I'm not sorry at all. I'm sorry that you have had a bad experience, and I genuinely say that. But the government is not planning to embark on some new wave of regulation of the media.
Did you want to ask a follow-up question there? It sounds like there's an issue here around the way it's been handled in the past. Was there another question that you had around that?
Yes, I do. Mr. Turnbull, politicians and the AFP commit serious offences, everything from perjury to suppression of primary evidence. So it's not just about the Press Council, it's about the Australian government and the cover-up of the Chappelle Corby case. We need to deal with this. We need answers.
No. I understand that, but I think this is not something for the communications minister in a regulatory way. I mean, what you've got to do is make your case. I mean, you should perhaps talk to your MP, get this this matter can be raised in Parliament. There's a number of avenues open to you. But it's not something, I don't have the levers to regulate the media, and I don't want them, other than, what we have of necessity for the broadcast media. But I certainly I have got no interest in, nor should I have any interest in regulating the newspapers. We've got a competitive, vigorous media landscape, and everyone's got views as to whether the media is doing a good job or a bad job or a fair or unfair job. But I just can't. I'm sorry, I can't help you with this one. You've got to take this up yourself, and if you feel that you can get your MP to raise this matter in Parliament for you.
Malcolm, and I understand that we're talking about government being other avenues for this issue to be taken up. With the government applying some of the ideas that are coming out of the Digital Transformation Office, will it make the government more porous so that issues like this or others are able to find the right place within government in a much more effective way?
Well, one hopes so. But I mean, the thing is, you've got. I mean, with all respect to Karen, she said politicians and police have all committed perjury. Well, I imagine the politicians and the police concerned would have a different perspective on that, to say the least. So, these are allegations which there are a number of ways for them to be ventilated, but she's gone through the process with the Australian Press Council and feels aggrieved by that. But you can certainly, if you can persuade your MP or a senator to raise this in the Parliament, then that's another way of dealing with it.
Okay. Well, we might call it there.
Okay.
Just so that everyone, those the top 5 questions and their authors, I want to say thank you to everyone who put their questions in, and also to everyone who supported their questions. Interacting with government isn't always the simplest thing to do, and it's a lot of work to actually go out and mobilize your friends and followers to vote for this. So if you asked a question or voted for a question or tuned in live tonight or followed this video afterwards, well, thank you. And just before we wrap up, I just want to ask one final question.
Yeah.
One to Oliver. So now you've connected with the Minister. We've had a very citizen-centric approach. What are some of the next steps for Code for Australia from here?
Sure. So what we want to do at Code for Australia is to bring in as many skilled and passionate people together to help government to move into the 21st century, whether you're a designer, a developer, a community organizer. There are avenues to participate in things like this or to work in government temporarily through the programs that we have.
Great. And Malcolm, so we've had the citizens front and center. We've asked them questions. Is this something that the DTO would do on a more regular basis, really bringing in questions that are coming from people across Australia to really get their issues heard and directly respond to?
Why not? Let's try it. See if it's interesting for people. You can try something, and then if it gets boring, stop doing it. Do something else. I don't know. I'm all in favour of trying something new. I mean, one of the great challenges in life is avoiding being bored. So it's always good to do something new, right?
Great. Well, let's keep it compelling and engaging for citizens around Australia and the likes. That's a wrap, folks. If you enjoy the conversation, make sure you share it on the hashtag AskMalcolm. You can comment on the video below. And remember, democracy is not a spectator sport.
Oh, that's a really good thing. It isn't.
It is.
It is not a spectator sport.
It is not a spectator sport.
I just say it in a slightly different way, but I'll give you another metaphor. I say that, the way I put it, a lot of people think politics is like football. And the only people in football, the only people that are playing the game are the people on the field, and everyone else sits in the stands and says yay or boo or whatever, depending on who they're backing and how the game's go. That's wrong. Everybody is on the field. Everyone's on the field. and all citizens are on the field just as much as politicians. Some people have got bigger megaphones than others. Some people have got bigger megaphones than politicians. But the active citizenship is one of the most important things to promote.
Absolutely.
So we are on the same page on that one.
That sounds good. At least we've got somebody to be on the same page. I hope you can all join us on the democratic sporting field. And next time we hang out with Malcolm. So tuning out now. Have a good night.
Yep. Have a good night.